Hello, everyone. My name is Gil, and today I'm going to talk about considerations for teaching online. So I have a PhD in mechanical engineering from the University of Maryland, College Park. I am a senior application engineer at ANSYS. I teach online courses pretty much all the time, everything from 1 hour sessions to full-on whole week courses on electronics reliability and how to simulate electronics reliability. So I'm pretty much an engineering, math and science kind of person. I have been an adjunct faculty at the University of Maryland since 2013. I teach two classes, Advanced Mechanics of Materials, which is more of a X equals 2 kind of answer. So lots of textbook solutions, recipes for how to handle stress strain inside of beams, and pretty much like a classical lecture plus homework plus tests. And then I also teach a computer-aided engineering, which that one is a little bit more open-ended. So this one is there are no correct solutions. All the solutions are correct. It's just how much smarts you can put inside of your particular solution that you're doing. And it's more about how to use computers to solve engineering problems. So that one is a little bit more open-ended and a lot more real-world example-oriented and not so much a textbook solution. So that kind of gives you an idea of the kind of courses that I teach on a regular basis for the last basically like last 6 years. I'm going to go over a few things here. I think the two most important ones are basically your environment and where you put your visual attention, and it all comes through from the preparation. I will go through the first one here, where teaching online is different. It just is. We are used to consuming media in a different way online, so your preparation will be different. If you are used to giving a lecture, homework, see you next week, or see you, next class kind of course, that doesn't really go well with online teaching, or it's not exactly how people are used to learning online. Lectures are really, really boring, and when you're not in person, they can be really boring. When you're not in person, you don't have the ability to interact, and you don't have the synergy, and you don't have the same energy because you're sitting in your own house. So think about, maybe you want to pre-record some of the videos and kind of spread it out over the semester and have the class time as formal kind of question answers, given that you've seen the lecture. Let's go over this one concept that I think is really important. Let's do this example together, and so on. Try to prepare. It takes about 1 hour for 1 hour of lecture. It takes about 3 hours of prep. So if I want to do a 3-hour lecture for this week, I need to prep for it for about 9 hours during the weekend, or before the time. So if you're teaching a course that has about 40 hours, or let's say 30 hours, you need to spend about 90 hours preparing that course. So it takes about a couple of weeks to prepare a course properly. A lot of you are probably you already have presentations for what you want to do in week 1, week 2, week 3, and so on. So if this is not a course that you're doing for the first time, it'll probably be relatively easy for you to transcode your stuff. But everything that you do online is faster by a factor of 2. So if there was a lecture that you were used to giving in about an hour, so you've done this, we've done this for 10 years now, and it used to take you about an hour, now it'll take about half an hour, because we go faster when we are teaching online. The prep work and the way that we run through slides and the way that we run through lectures in general just make everything go faster. And remember, the interaction with the student is not as obvious as when you're sitting in the same room. The energy is different. So you have to make the interaction happen. You have to prepare ahead of time for that interaction. So pre-recording part of a lecture or pre-recording something and having it already ready in the student's mind, knowing that they're going to have to, all right, everyone, welcome to class. Why doesn't everyone put in the chat a couple of sentences on this and that? What you thought about the the concepts that I was going over. Or you can do so for engineering classes, and for math-based classes, you can put a problem down and then say, all right, you've had a couple of days to look at it. What do you guys think is the solution, or what is the solution methodology, or what kind of examples can you come up with that are kind of relevant to it? If you're teaching things like art or history or things that are a little bit more reading based or vocabulary based, this makes it a lot easier because there are a lot more examples that you can give from the humanities. I like to use a combination. I usually have a handout that is already emailed or put into the Canvas or whatever Blackboard system that you guys are using. I already upload it to the course website beforehand, and usually I don't necessarily need to pre-record something if I don't want to, but I will make a 5-minute recording ahead of time. Sometimes usually it's just me talking to a screen, and then I will talk about it during class. And then sometimes I will also have something ready for right after class. I'll be like, all right, I'm going to upload this PDF for you guys, and we'll see what you think of it, and we'll talk about it next time. Or send me something before next class. Send me something. It's not really a homework. It's more like that's for engaging the thought process and the conversation, and to see how people express themselves. When you're speaking, one of the biggest things, as you can see in this presentation, you can't see me. The only thing that I have is to use my voice. Now, I can be super, super loud, and I can be super, super quiet. So the first thing that people notice is their volume. The good thing is that regardless of whatever speaking voice you have, the person at the other end of the line can always bring the volume up or down. So just try to keep your volume stable. Don't start screaming in the middle, or don't start whispering in the middle. So whatever voice you have, just speak in your regular voice. Judicious use of the mute button. Anytime you are not speaking, like if you're writing something down, or if you're showing something, or if you're making a diagram, if you are not speaking, use the mute button. It is perfectly okay to have dead air. In order to get good recordings, usually I use a headset, and it's usually okay. There's no need to buy a studio quality $5,000 microphone for most cases. There's plenty of standalone microphones, headset type deals that you can get for anywhere between $30 to $100. Now, I don't know what your university has, your particular places, but some of them might actually decide to get you headsets if you're going to full online teaching mode, so you don't have this problem. But test your volume and what you sound like before you go into the class. So now, today, open up one of your Zoom or Teams or however you're running your classes through. Check it. Record yourself with the microphone, the same setup that you're going to use in the same room that you're going to use, and check for echoes, weird sounds. Maybe when the air conditioning turns on, it starts making noises right at your computer, and then moving the computer or moving the microphone will help you. Sometimes there's equalizers for microphones that can actually help you kind of eliminate any outside noises. If you have kids and other dogs and pets and things like that, we'll talk about that in a moment. But then also, when you are speaking, when you record yourself, you're going to hate it. Doesn't exist any person who records their voice and then they listen to it and they don't want to immediately turn it off, because we all think that we sound like the three tenors when we're speaking, but in reality, when we hear it ourselves, it's like, wow. But don't worry, the students have no idea and they don't care. It's not your voice sounds exactly the same to them through the recording, as long as it's consistent, so they know what you sound like. And if you have a grating voice, it doesn't really matter. Your students are not there to hear your mellow tones. We're not all of us supposed to be like anthem singers. So it's okay whatever your voice is. If you're mumbling and if you don't have good diction, that's a problem. But what your voice sounds like, that's not a problem. People who have heavy accents or you're pronouncing words in other languages, like in mathematics, a lot of things come from French, maybe even from Russian, and so we have or Latin. So if you have a weird pronunciation or if you have a weird accent, again, it doesn't matter as long as you're consistent. And I know that you're feeling bad about it. You're like, oh wow, I sound like, heavily accented or something like that. But it doesn't matter as long as you're consistent, because accents and pronunciations, if you try to pronounce the same Greek letter in two different ways, that's confusing. But as long as you call it the same thing, then that's okay, and it doesn't really matter. Some of us have a tendency to go into like a robotic voice when we speak. It's okay to speak like you normally do. You don't need to sound like you're coming out of a sound blaster. You just need to sound like you normally talk. And those of you who speak with your hands a lot, keep moving your hands. I know that no one can see it, but it changes the way that you're interacting with the words. So it's okay to continue using your hands. And all of these that you hear me saying, it's perfectly fine, first of all. So we're recording a lecture. It doesn't have to be polished. This is not a TV drama show where all the actors get like 90 takes. You're basically doing this in one live take, and there's no editing. So there's no like director, editor, producer who are going to look through it and cut it at exactly the right frame and then have a perfect transition to the next scene. No. You're doing this live, and you're running this basically like we're more like stand-up comedians and more like singers in a band than we are anything else. So if you think about it that way, we don't really have the advantage of taking many takes. Now, stand-up comedians or anyone who stands on a stage, they practice a lot. So if you want to be able to say a sentence without using any interjection, all you have to do is say it a bunch of times until you kind of memorize it without any of the interjections. And I've done this many, many times, and it really does work. If you have a sentence that does not have any kind of interjections in it, or any kind of words that are not necessary there, then memorize that sentence, and you will be able to run that through in your lectures. Everything else, you're going to have these speech patterns. It's very difficult, unless you've got a classic education in diction, it's very difficult to actually not say those things. We're all kind of human, and we all interact with words that way. If there's a doubt for you, the microphone is always on. Even when the mute button is on, the microphone is still on. I have a headset that has an indicator light. It's actually red if the microphone is on, and it's actually not red when the microphone is not on. Even when it's not red, I check several times before I actually say anything or do any background noise that's happening. And it's fine, things happen in the world. Just remember that there's always a hot mic. So anything that's coming to your mind until the meeting is over, until the class is actually over and you're disconnected, everyone can hear everything you're saying, and it's all being recorded. When we move our mouse across the screen, it is very difficult sometimes for people to see. There's a lag in what happens in the screen. And even now I am moving my mouse, and you'll see that I do it slowly. You don't want to move it around quickly, be like, oh, look here, look there, look here, look there. It's very difficult for the students to follow. So either don't move your mouse at all, make it obvious. You can actually, if you turn on display pointer trails, then every time you move the pointer, it'll go and keep moving around. If you have a Mac, it's different. I mean, it's still called pointer trails. It makes it more obvious as to when you're moving your mouse. It just gives you a better visual input. There's also standalone apps that help you. It's kind of, you install it on your machine, and then every time you click with your left click, it's a it gives a blue dot around your pointer, and every time you do a right click, it gives you a red one around your red circle around your pointer, kind of like a heartbeat. And then every time you do something else, it has colors, and it has all kinds of. You can do like a laser pointer, you can do like a whiteboard, and all kinds of things. If you're going to draw with your mouse instead of writing, it's kind of hard to draw with your mouse. Unless you're really good at it and you've done it a lot. I will usually open up another PowerPoint slide, a blank PowerPoint slide, and start putting text boxes and actually use the draw function from PowerPoint, because then that way I can actually save it to the course, save it at the end as a PDF, and then upload it to the course website. In general, if you know you're laggy, so a lot of times there's a lag between your voice and whatever's going on the screen. Since I'm recording this right now, I know that there is no lag, but after every interaction that you do, just wait for a second. So you do a slide change, or you know you're about to do a slide change. So what you need to do is you need to hold on, wait, and be like, or you can start talking about a slide before you even move into it. There's all kinds of ways of doing it. Just remember, wait after everything that you do. Try not to move the mouse. If you keep the mouse on something, and then that's what your students are going to look at. If you move your mouse, your students are going to start looking at whatever it is that you move your mouse to. And we'll talk about this in a second when we talk about visual attention. This is the most important thing in this entire thing is bringing us to everything that I've said up till now brings us to this. Your voice is part one, and we all know how to use our voice. We all talk in a certain way, and it's perfectly fine in the words that you say. What you are looking at, that is your visual attention. Two problems. Number one, have a lag to the look here, look there. So if you say things like, this guy is over here and that guy is over there, that's not okay. Anytime you have an image, introduce the image first. Notice there's an image at the bottom left of my screen. It has 3 boxes. The green square is in. That's how you say the thing that has the attribute. Instead of saying, because when I'm in a classroom, when I'm in a lecture, I can point at the blackboard and say, you see this one right over here, goes over that one over there, and then, this and that are all there. So what we do is we use what's called proper names for things. And I will highlight things where in a lecture, if I was doing this on a blackboard, I wouldn't take the time to write out the word local maxima or local minima. I would just point at them and say, see, this is a local maxima, this is a local minima. So, and this is the graph of x versus y, y versus x, whatever. So I would recommend that when you prepare your lectures, when you prepare your visual aids, make sure that they are labeled, and then you can use their proper name, and don't use the word this and that. In the beginning you will, but over time you will notice, now that I said it, you'll notice that you're doing it and you'll stop doing it. It's just normal like that. If you choose to do a webcam, I don't like to do a webcam because I am I don't think that it's important for them to see me at all. Those of us who decide to use a webcam, remember first of all that the camera is always on. Even when the camera is off, the camera is always on. Until you have black tape over the camera sees what you're doing. So if you have a webcam that's like a standalone USB connected, after you disconnect the camera, that's when you know that the camera is off. Even after the lecture, the camera might still be on. These apps are a little bit aggressive in how they use your machine once you give them a little bit of permission. A bunch of what I took here comes from other places. There's a bunch of these things on how to do webcam tutorials and how to do webcam lectures. In general, lighting is important. If you know that your lecture, you're recording always at like 10 a.m., then it's different than if you're recording at 10 p.m. So those pre-recording videos, they might look different at different times of day. The light might look different at different times of day. So just be aware of that. Always wear professional attire. So whatever is visible on the camera. So it might just be a shirt. It might be a shirt and pants. If you're standing in front of like a whiteboard or something like that, if you have a background that you're using with yourself, or if you're going into a classroom to record or something like that. If you're using your webcam from the actual like a laptop or something, those webcams are really distorting, so you're going to look a little weird. And another thing that happens is if you have hair, then frizzy hair comes out in webcams a lot. Like they catch the little light there, so you might look like you have stars around your head, which is perfectly fine. No one actually really cares, and anyone who does care, they're a smaller person than you are. And look at the way that you look like in the webcam. Laptops, it's better to prop up a laptop and have it higher so that like you're looking at it eye level instead of you're looking down at the webcam. It depends on where your webcam sits on the laptop itself as well. I think that the angle from the bottom is very unflattering to most of us. And not only that, it is very disorienting to people, because look at the way that you're looking at the laptop. Usually we're looking from up to down. The screen is not like right up in front of our face. It's a little bit lower. So imagine that if you're looking lower and the angle is weird that it's going up, it kind of makes everything look a little bit weird. I don't like webcam usage in general, but those of us who have to, if you're teaching something that they have to look at you and see what you are doing, it might be a little bit, I'm thinking of like art and theater and things like that. It might be a little bit hard to work without a webcam. So you might even consider getting a more professional webcam with a proper, and converting a corner of a room to something that looks a little bit more professional. I like to use backgrounds that are clean. So those Amazon boxes during quarantine that you've been getting, put a bunch of those behind you. That gives you a nice, even background. A whiteboard is always good. Sometimes they are shiny and it doesn't really come out nice in the video. They can't really see it, so make sure that the lighting is correct for it. If you have a window behind you or anything behind you, it's kind of probably not a good idea. Most people have their computers so that they are facing the screen and the screen is behind you. There's just a wall. I would actually turn that 180 so that the laptop is in the middle of the room, or the computer's in the middle of the room, and you are as close to the wall as possible. Don't use the backgrounds that like Zoom has preloaded in there in software. It doesn't really they don't really look good. The environment that the students are in is really different. Remember, the first and the last 2 minutes of any lecture are kind of dead minutes. You're waiting for people to log on. They have lags. They have to restart a computer because of reasons, because it's happened to all of us. They are late from another meeting or call or something else. They are not exactly ready. So just remember that the first 2 minutes are transitional and the last 2 minutes are transitional. I like to start things pretty much on time. So if I have a 10 a.m., then at 10 a.m. and 1 second, I say, all right, everyone, my name is Gil. Let's start this lecture, blah, blah, blah. I would always do the first 2 minutes. I always say my name. This is the class name that it is. Like, this is ENPM 620, and this is class number 5. And the reason I do that is because recordings get mixed up all the time, and your students might be downloading several recordings, and the only thing that they have to know, they might not name the recordings correctly. They might actually name them incorrectly. They might lose where it was. So it would really help if you had a first slide that has your name, the class, and the class number and the class name. So they would know which one is which. It's kind of like, you know, when you see directors doing the slides for, you know, the cut and things like that. I don't know what those things are called, but it's like having a title card for something. And it really helps me. And it's basically like the first couple minutes, I usually say, like, this is class number this. Last time we talked about that. And it means that basically it's like that you see on TV on weekly serials. That's what I think of it. That's how it is. And usually give questions before you start. All right, before you introduce any new information, let's talk about questions from last time. This is also a really good time. So if someone had sent you a question from the lecture of last time, and now you are you know, starting the new class, anything that happened in that week or in those couple of days, you can actually say, okay, I had a couple of questions from people, and you don't have to call out specific people. I have a couple of questions from people, and here are the questions. So that way, even if it's you have people joining in, you know, beeping in into the meeting, you can just do your thing, and they didn't really miss any new content. They just missed the questions from last time, and that they can go back and watch them later if it's being recorded. If you are using visual aids and you're talking over a video, again, I highly recommend that you check if videos can actually play correctly through the network. It is probably better that if you have a video to load it into your course material and say, like, this is lecture 5. We're going to slide 19. I'm going to play this video, so that when you play the video, and if you have a problem, you can say, all right, so you all have this video on the course website. You can download it and watch it, and let's talk about it in a few minutes. If you have subtitles for video, that is pretty much a must these days. Some people have trouble hearing. Some people might be in an area where the volume of the video doesn't come through. Some machines, some computers have problem interpreting the video as a system noise. And that basically means that the source of the video, the audio portion of the video might actually get cut off. And computers do this automatically. It's in order to prevent the system noises. So like when I click on something and it does that gong that tells you can't click on it, it doesn't actually go through the audio to my audience. Or if I have like a message notification on the other screen, it doesn't actually make a noise that the audience can hear, but I'm the only one who can hear it. So just make sure that you have subtitles for every video, or you write out like what goes on in that video in case the video doesn't work, or in case the audio of the video doesn't come through. Perfectly good to use a chat or a Q&A. Sometimes it can get distracting. I like to use the Q&A a lot in my when I'm talking in the lectures. I will usually have 3 or 4 points. So about every 15 minutes, I will have a stop, and I will be like, all right, let's stop and let me go over the Q&A. Sometimes I have to go back a little, which is a little bit disruptive, but it's much better than trying to answer a question on the spot. If you are good, and you know that you're good, and you know that you're on top of things, then you can actually be on the Q&A. I have 2 screens, so I put the Q&A on the other side, and I kind of look at it, and I know that I'm good at this. So I have no problem like seeing the question and saying like, hey, John, I'm going to get back to you in a second. Or if someone's asking something that's completely relevant to what I'm doing right now, that's okay. If you give them plenty of time to stop and ask questions, remember, it takes some time. They need to get to the chat location. It might not be open. They need to type it in. It takes a while to type something in. If it's an involved question, if they have to think about the question, it takes them some time to pop it in, and then press enter. Now, if you allow people to unmute themselves in small classes, that works very well. Then the person just unmutes and goes, hey, professor, can I ask you a question about this thing that you're showing over there? The green box next to the red box. Excellent. Perfect. If you have 100 people in the lecture, unmuting might not be okay. it might be too much and it might be too distracting. You might not be able to handle that amount of zoo noises, because then people forget to unmute themselves and then they have things happening in the background. In general, if you have background noises, I got to tell you, I used to be embarrassed by these things, no longer embarrassed. Perfectly okay. You have pets, you have kids, you have a doorbell, you have something, just say, excuse me 1 second, put yourself on mute, walk out of the camera. Remember, the camera is always on. Walk out of the camera, deal with whatever you have to deal with. Even if it takes 3-4 minutes, deal with whatever you have to deal with, come back to a clean environment. And it's kind of hard because it's bifurcates your brain a little bit, but it's better to deal with it than to start screaming on a webcam, be like, hold on, I'm coming over. Just say, hold on, everyone. Give me a minute. I need to deal with something. If you're pre-recording, obviously all these things go away because you can either cut them out of the pre-recording or you can basically just start the recording from scratch. It is unavoidable that at some point in your 40 hours of lecture, you will have some computer pop-up, computer problems in general, something popping into the screen. Try to avoid the embarrassing ones. Don't have your email pop up. Remember, this is being recorded. So if your email pops up, even for a second, they can flash grab it. That can be, you can flash grab it right off. So the best thing to do is to just turn off everything that you don't actually need. So if it's just the PowerPoint and the Zoom, then just the PowerPoint and the Zoom. That's probably the best thing ever. So don't have your Outlook open, don't have anything that has pop-ups on it. Just basically close anything that has pop-ups on it. You can create a guest profile on your own machine that basically doesn't have any of those pop-ups. That's a little bit more technically challenging to do. It's a little bit harder to do. It's completely unavoidable that something will happen to you. You just have to learn to live with it. This is the new normal. We have problems with connectivity. I'm not going to talk about that too much. If you know you're in a bad place, or if you know you have bad connection, or if you know that the cable company is working on your stuff this week, basically avoid the live meeting. Pre-record everything onto your machine, which is very easy to do. Record the thing onto your own machine, upload it at your own time to the website, and let the people ask questions. It's less interactive, it's less good, but it's better than having something that keeps cutting in and out when you have 30 people on the line. If you don't have technical competence in general, this is the time to learn the basics, at least the basics of running a PowerPoint. You'll see that everything that I did now, this is one of the least sophisticated lectures I give. I have a static PowerPoint. There are no videos. There is no audio playing. It's just my voice speaking to a screen. And if you can do that, the bare minimum of opening the meeting, opening PowerPoint, and being able to scroll through it, you're okay. If you want to use writing pad, your students are probably going to be very digital natives these days, right? So they probably know how to use all of these things. There are tons of tutorials on how to use all of these things. I have a pen that I can write on my screen with. I have a touch screen that I can use for sure. I have additional tools that I use also for like 3D manipulation of objects. It becomes a little bit easier if you're technically competent, but if you don't know how to switch quickly from like PowerPoint to a webcam to a video playing in the background, then initially just plan on static presentations until you learn how to do it better. So it's, part of it is like, how good are you? Because look, in a show, there's a person who does the lighting, there's a person who does the microphones, there's a director, there's, a camera operator. You are everything here. You write the script, you operate the camera, you operate the microphone, you do all the interaction, you do the Q&A. You're basically a one-person show, and it gets kind of hard. So it's not like you're Luddites. It's just like it's hard to run all of these things, especially since if you've never done it before, and this is your first time doing things like that. The last thing that I want to really talk about is it's not really has to do with anything that you're doing, an actual static lecture or in a lecture. just in general, between classes, what do you do in the course? Online learning is different. We binge watch on TV shows these days. We don't really do the weekly serials. We're not all sure what it's going to look like. This is a mass experiment where we're at the forefront of it this year, where we're transitioning to online learning 100%, like for a massive audience. It used to be like a niche thing. There are people who learn things from YouTube and Twitter and whatever. There are people who are able to learn from online classrooms. So we know it's possible. It's just a little bit different. Some of the students will prefer to learn at their own pace. I would say with those, I would say warn them ahead of time and remind them that, look, you might say you learn at your own pace. You might think that you're good at it, but there are certain expectations after week 1, week 2, week 3, because you won't be able to do things at the second half of the semester if you don't actually do the things in the first half, if you don't actually understand those concepts well. So online teaching is just different. There's no such thing as office hours. Someone can't just pop in. So just make sure that you have time in your calendar carved out for it. I like to do it by appointment, and I'll have an open meeting once every couple of weeks, where it's basically like the first, like I will have an open a meeting like an hour before the lecture starts, or an hour after the lecture starts. It's kind of like, okay, I'm going to just stay here. I'm going to keep this open. And if anyone has any questions, just let me know. Most of the time by appointment is perfectly fine. Just have a Zoom meeting, and just have a meeting with a person, and where they can get some one-on-one, or you can also do it with groups or things like that. I would say for grading, let's not be naive. The students are here for the grade. You're here for the teaching. I set weekly. The way that I do it is I set weekly goals, and I enforce them very strictly. I don't like people to fall behind, so I give them weekly goals. It's not a daily goal. I give them weekly goals, and they are achievable. They're always achievable, and if someone is lagging, I let them know this is not okay. Like, if you can't do this at the pace that we are going, then it's not okay. Sometimes, like, well, this week was a little hard for me, but usually I'm okay. Then it's on a case-by-case basis. And remember that this semester, you might have to go with tests that are completely unproctored. So I'm not exactly sure how some of you will deal with that, but we probably, some of the apps that get downloaded in order to do proctoring of tests, they do not work well. The last time that I tried to use one of them, a bunch of my students had problems with getting them to work, and it is a little bit of a problem. So just know that some of the tests might have to be unproctored. You might have to change the way you're doing tests. If you're doing group work for your people, the online collaboration is a little bit different than in-person collaboration. If you do have a group, I would say that force them to have a meeting where you are there. Yeah, I know Big Brother is watching and all that, but force them to have a meeting when you are there at least once a month. So like 3 times during the semester if you have group work. I mean, if the group work is only for like a week, then make sure that there's at least one meeting when you're there with every group, and be like, it could be a 15-minute meeting, like, give me a status update. Think of it like you're a boss and they're your employees, and you want to know, this project that you're going to do for me, I want to have a status update after, a couple of days. Most of the time the group work is pretty much going to be like on an entire like semester basis. So if you have a group work that's on a semester basis, at least every couple weeks or every 3 weeks, have a meeting with them. And it doesn't have to be long. Again, it could be 15-20 minutes where you have a meeting where you're like, all right, give me a status update to see what you're doing. Just want to see what they're doing. And of course, there's going to be one person who doesn't do anything, and there's going to be one person who does all the work. It's normal. Ask them what is going on. If you ask, they will tell you. Students are not, they're not there to deceive you. They'll tell you what's going on if you just ask. And that's pretty much all I really had in terms of technical content. I would say that the biggest thing is managing your expectation. If you're expecting that in the first time that you're teaching an online course, or if you're relatively don't teach that many online courses, if you're expecting everything to go well and that you're going to be the greatest thing in the world and basically every single lecture you give is going to be like the best TED talk you've ever seen on YouTube, then your expectations are a little bit off. Manage your students' expectations. Ask them, what do you expect to see in this course? What do you want to get out of this course? And then tell them, what I want to show you in this course, I need to give you 1, 2, 3, 4 things that I really, really need everyone to do. And these are my expectations, and this is how we're going to get there together. Like, I want to give you this information. You need this information. Tell me what you want, and I will try to give it to you. Kind of like they are your customers, so to speak, right? You're providing a service to them of teaching. So they're paying with time and with money, they're paying for your expertise in a certain subject area. So just ask them, what do you want? Tell them what you want, and usually that'll be okay. If you expect things to go right and you don't have a plan B, you're probably doing a bad thing for yourself, and I would highly recommend that you don't do that. Thank you very much for taking the time. Remember, we're all adjusting. Teaching online is going to be different than what you've seen. Do it 1 week at a time, 1 task at a time, kind of like with the level of uncertainty that we have even now about what's going to happen in September. I would say that the transition to online might be weird. I might actually end up eating my words, and everything's going to look completely different than what I think it's going to look like, because the scale of universities moving online is just larger than anything we've seen before. The only thing you can do is basically control whatever you can. Be in control of your own little thing, and run your course the way you want to run your course. Work with your TAs the way you want to work with your TAs. Work with your students the way you want to work with your students. They're not necessarily happy about moving to online classes either. They might not be in an environment, they might not be sitting in an environment that they're enjoying either. So just take it one week at a time and see what you can do to best serve your students during this semester, to give them the knowledge basically that they need out of the class. And if you have any questions or comments or anything like that, please feel free to email me at ANSYS, and comment back to this wherever this thing is being uploaded. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.